Welcome to Not Just a Transaction, a podcast series hosted by experienced real estate authorities Nick Prefontaine and Zachary Beach. In each episode, the hosts bring you expert guests to help you navigate the many creative options available for buying or selling a home, while cutting out the costly hurdles of a conventional real estate deal. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Not Just a Transaction, the home buyers and sellers show, the home buyers and sellers podcast, where we're diving in deep and providing value to all you buyers and sellers out there. I'm your host, Nick Prefontaine, and joining me this week as a guest on the show is Sean Tepper. Sean, welcome to the show, first off.
Hey, Nick. Hey, thanks for bringing me on. This is great.
Awesome. Now, Sean, you come from a little bit different of a background on, who you are. So I want you to dive a little bit deeper into that and tell the listeners who you are.
Sure. Yeah. Sean Tepper. I've been in software engineering for about 15 years, and I have a big passion for investing, specifically investing in the stock market. And I won't make this very long, but I started investing, angel investing probably about 10 years ago in private businesses, mainly tech businesses, with hopes to see these businesses take off like a rocket, 10x multiple, 100x multiple. Needless to say, a lot easier said than done. And so around 2015, I actually made the transition to the public market, the stock market. And fortunately there, you have historical data, you have proven businesses that have obviously found product market fit and have customers. So it's a lot easier to make consistent returns in the public market. So yeah, that's kind of a little overview of my background.
Okay. And go a little bit deeper into that. How long have you been doing that?
Sure. So I'll give you a fun story here that provides a little context on how the transition was made. But from 2010 through 2015, the angel investing was a great experience because you get to analyze businesses and invest in good tech leaders that obviously you hope they can drive a business to that big multiple. And if anybody listening or if yourself is familiar with the venture capital space, it can be perceived as a glamorous business, but believe it or not, 90% of the investments made don't make any money. It's a losing game, and you hope the 10% makes up for those losses. So when I turn my attention to the public market, I knew that the guys that we all know and respect, like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, even their mentor, which is Ben Graham, these guys make consistent returns and they consistently beat the market. And the question is, how are they doing that, right? These are not gambling men. These are not guys that go to the casino and put all their chips on black. That's not their personality, right? So I knew that, okay, they're doing something that we don't exactly know about, but we can only assume. And I did some homework and figured out, yes, there's some business acumen, but there's math. They are using math to make their lives easier. So me being a software engineering, project management specifically has been my trade the last 15 years or so. I'm like, okay, so let's apply software engineering methodology to the stock markets and figure out what they're doing mathematically. So this was kind of a boring process, but I literally read as many books as I could, watched as many YouTube videos as I could to start to write an algorithm in Excel that allowed me to put in numbers and with little to no emotion, make investments in stocks that make me consistent returns. So long story short, I actually did find something. I did find an algorithm. I give a lot of credit to Phil Town as one of the main guys, and he's been a follower of Ben Graham and Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger for years as well. But thanks to him, I did write an algorithm. I used it from 2015 and 16 through 2019 on my own. Returns in the stock market were usually 15 to 50% consistently. And I was skeptical the whole time because I constantly questioned it and retweaked it and made changes. But in 2019, things got interesting. I started talking to retail investors, everyday people like yourself and myself, as well as institutional investors, which are people who work in corporate finance. And everybody across the board was like, hey, you should turn this into a tool to share with others. And so that leads to a platform I created called TYKR. It's spelled TYKR, and it's it's think of it like a stock screener, helps find great investments, and educational platform all in one. And that launched actually last summer. So we're almost live a year now.
Wow, that's interesting. So how what is it that you do? If we can simplify this for the listeners, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis now?
Sure. Yeah. So I love podcasting. I have my own podcast, and speaking of, love to get you on my podcast and share your story. But my job is within TYKR is in TYKR, just to back up, it's classified as a SaaS, a software as a service platform. So think of like, anybody familiar with like software platforms like Salesforce or even Netflix. It's like you're creating a software platform people use. You're not actually yourself providing a service. People just log in and they use the tool. So my job is mainly marketing and sales. So I love talking to people, getting on podcasts. I do have a pretty cool affiliate program. So I like talking to people in personal finance. They either have a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast focused on personal finance. And they're usually people that I find to be pretty good fits for the affiliate program. And to give you a little transparency here, TYKR's global. So about, I'd say 20% of our audience is out of the US, 80% is outside, because there's such a high demand for people are finding out they can manage their own investments on their own, because it's fortunately podcasts and YouTube had made it really approachable. People listen to a podcast or see something on YouTube, they're like, oh, so you're saying I can just create a TD Ameritrade, a E-Trade account and go ahead and do this on my own? Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Now, so I know this is a little out of left field a little bit, Sean, but it's just something that came to mind for me while listening to you talk. That's like, if I'm just a buyer thinking of buying, or a seller thinking of selling out there, what is like one thing that I can act on now that I'd be able to do to get involved with investing the way you're phrasing it, like within the stock market and things like that? Like, what is the one thing they could do?
One thing they could do, it's probably the easiest thing to do, is because TYKR's an educational platform and it's free to join. We've got a free trial, is just get in and start reading the educational information. It's really simplified. Like, give you a little context here. When you join, you get 21 tips on how to get started. Each tip will take about a minute or two to read. They're deciphered down, so it's really simple language, layman's terms, finance. Especially people work in corporate finance, they can agree to this. There are a lot of $20 words, a lot of acronyms. We don't know what they mean, and TYKR really simplifies that. So that's literally, the education is where you want to start. How do you get started? One quick tip here: when you get started, start small. $1,000, invest in the stock market. You're probably going to buy 5 stocks, maybe less, and that's it. You want to just bring up your confidence, and as you start building returns, you can start investing more thereafter. So kind of, you want to dip your toes in the water, if you will.
Well, that's awesome. And I think by having you on today and having more guests out of the little bit different than what we do every day, which is real estate, I think we're educating the public out there about more things than just real estate. There's more than just real estate out there, and we'd like to provide kind of a whole life solution to everyone out there. So
Totally.
That's awesome. Now, lastly, this is, as you can imagine, one of my favorite, if not the favorite questions, and that's, why do you give a shit? Why, at the end of the day, to you, is it not just a transaction? In other words, why do you care about what you're doing and helping people?
Well, you could agree with this, and I think a lot of listeners could too, but in grade school, middle school, high school, we are not taught how to scale revenue residually. We are not taught to make money work for us. We are taught in a system that makes us work for money. We are slaves to the dollar. And I absolutely despise that. From a young age, we should be taught how to leverage money to work for us. So, and what that has resulted in, this is a statistic that may stick with a lot of people is, and this is just in the US, but 70% of Americans have $1,000 total in savings and retire and investments or less. 70%, $1,000 or less. So why I created Ticker is for people to make up lost time. Sure, you can go work with a financial advisor, and we have a lot of advisors, and they will put you in to mutual funds or index funds or ETFs, and you'll get about 6%, maybe 8%, and that's totally fine. As you get older, you want to reduce your risk, right? And probably go there. But if you're younger, if you're in your 20s, your 30s, even your 40s, this is your opportunity to start getting involved, start investing in individual stocks, because your returns are going to be significantly greater and you're going to make up for lost time. So if you're one of those people who doesn't have, you're thinking about your retirement and you're calculating how much you have saved and how much it'll, or how long it'll last, you may be surprised. It's probably, you're going to run out of cash pretty quick. This is the strategy that can make up for lost time.
So you're looking to educate the market out there and show them that there's a different way.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now I know as we're wrapping up here, Sean, is there anything that I missed and didn't ask you that you're like, oh, I wish you would have asked that, or something that you would like to share to the listeners out there to wrap this up?
Well, I think this is a good question or a good comment, I should say, for your audience. On my podcast, I get a lot of people on who are real estate investors. Sometimes they just buy and hold the properties for the ongoing residual rental, or they flip homes, they buy and sell. And I love both strategies because I look at real estate as a great tool for cash flow, whereas a stock market is a complementary solution to just compounding wealth. You keep your money in your investment brokerage, which is like here in the States, TD Ameritrade, E-Trade, and Robinhood are the big three. Keep your money there, but compound it. Because if you've got real estate working in one bucket and your stock portfolio building in the other, you're going to build your wealth pretty quick over time. You go 5 years, 10 years, things are going to look really impressive. I just have to say, real estate people, they tend to do well if they are using both to their advantage.
Awesome. And obviously, as you know, just being on the show, this is for home buyers and sellers. So we're a little bit more biased to think that real estate is the way to go. But I think it's important to mention that you should be doing both if you have the opportunity to. And that's the way that you truly are able to be successful. Because if you have both building at the same time, there's going to be no stopping you. Is that fair to say?
100% agree. There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. And Sean, talk about your show a little bit. I know we didn't dive into that fully here,
Sure.
But for the listeners out there, if they're interested in checking that out and learning more, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the podcast was called Payback Time. Payback time is a term used in finance for when your investment doubles, but it's also a term I like to use when you're going to get yours. You put in the work, now when you're getting the returns. And what I do is I like to interview people who, I like to hear their journey. Like, let's walk through the pains, the struggles, so we can share that with our listeners and how they build businesses, how they build a portfolio of real estate, how they invest in the stock market. I will say I've got a lot of people who have been on that are real estate. A lot of people have built service-based businesses, some product-based businesses, all the variety. But it's really cool to hear stories on how people build businesses and build wealth, especially residual cash flow. I'm all about. Big fan.
Awesome. What? I don't really know who wouldn't be a big fan of that.
Well, it goes back to, there's a lot of people working out there and they don't have second streams of income that are residual. And it goes right down to the fundamentals. We're not taught that in school. It's a crying shame. You probably look back, I look back too. If I would have been taught these things in like middle school, by the time in high school, I would have been like planting seeds, building relationships, thinking about what kind of foundation I would have. But it's just the way our society is. So
Yeah, that's if you guys didn't catch that, you listeners out there didn't catch it. I paused and it took a little bit. I was thinking, well, I don't know who wouldn't be in favor of residual income. Yeah,
Right.
one of the things growing up, I was actually fortunate when I was in high school. I had an economics teacher who always talked about his portfolio and his stocks and what he
Nice.
was getting paid, dividends and everything like that. And he's like, I didn't do anything for that other than, collect it because I had that particular stock at the
Right.
time. So
Right.
I guess I was exposed a little bit at that time in my life too, which very fortunate for. But yeah, I think you've definitely provided a lot of value for the listeners today. So I want to thank you for coming on. Not just a transaction. And if you're a home buyer or seller out there that's just kind of interested in dipping your toe in the water and learning a little bit more about how you can buy a home with us or how we can potentially buy your home, head on over to our website. That's pre property with a Y, solutions with an S.com, prepropertysolutions.com. Fill out a contact form there and we'll definitely get in touch with you as soon as possible. Sean, thanks again for coming, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as I did.
This was great, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Not Just a Transaction. If you want to explore selling a home, buying a home, or resources to learn more, go to prepropertysolutions.com.